something that the right is actually really good at, is polarizing the working class along other lines like race, gender, nationality, faith, sexuality. They basically start these class wars that they actually really don't give a shit about at all. Like, the right-wing politicians really don't care about like gay marriage or abortion or anything like that, but they know that focusing on these class wars will divide working class people based on their identities, and that they also know that liberal politicians will totally buy into this. Like, they will respond to these, you know, tropes about racism or whatever, rather than focusing on actually uniting the multiracial working class. And so I think it's our job to redraw these lines. Like, we need to redraw these battle lines and say that actually that is just to divide us. And the real reason that you're suffering right now is not because an immigrant came and took your job. It's because your boss is exploiting you and, you know, exploiting you for profit. And that's what's really going on here. So we need to repair the damage that's been done by the right wing and liberals fighting over these class war, these culture wars for the past like 40 years in this country. And we need to name the enemy. So we need to talk about how it's not just Republicans who have created the situation that we're in. It's also Democrats, and that both of these parties are beholden to the capitalist class. And that's the real problem here, is capitalism is not working for working people in this country, and socialism is the solution. So I just want to illustrate how we did this here in the East Bay during Javanka's campaign. So in California, the #1 issue for voters right now is housing. We are in a major housing crisis in California. Rents are through the roof, and people, it's forcing working people out of their communities. And that was a big part of why we campaigned for Proposition 10, which would have legalized comprehensive rent control across the state. But the problem in California is that the common sense now among like pretty much everyone on the, you know, all liberals basically, is that the reason that we have a housing crisis is that we don't have enough housing. And if we just empower developers, capitalist developers, to build more housing, we can just completely build our way out of this housing crisis. It's what's become known as the YIMBY movement, which stands for Yes in My Backyard. So we ran against a YIMBY here in the East Bay, Buffy Wicks, who just, you know, said, build baby build, basically. Like, we should rezone the entire state of California to empower these developers to build more. Completely ignoring the fact that these developers, that land is extremely expensive in California, and developers want a return on their investment. So they're only going to build luxury housing that they can get that return. So it's not going to do anything for working people. We know that as socialists. And YIMBYs have done a really great job over the past few decades as basically characterizing anyone who's against the YIMBY movement as a NIMBY, which stands for No in My Backyard. And that's basically what they tried to do. They sent out all these mailers saying like, Javanka's wrong on housing because she wants the crisis to continue because she doesn't want to build more housing. And the way that we talked about this, I think, really changed things for many people that we reached through this campaign last fall. We campaigned on not only Proposition 10, but we campaigned on a call for universal rent control across the entire state of California. And furthermore, we campaigned for beautiful, hundreds of thousands of units of beautiful social housing for all in California that is not treated as a commodity for developer profit, but as a place for humans to live. So that's what we talked about, and that really raised the expectations of people. Like, people had never really thought of public housing as a good thing before, because in the past it's been means tested and defunded, and it's like, in American life, like public housing is not a place that people really like aspire to live in. But that's not the case all over the world. There's Red Vienna, which is, yeah, exactly. It had a democratic socialist government in between World War I and World War II. And they built hundreds of thousands of units of social housing, which still today, 25% of people in Vienna live in. So it can totally be done, and that's what we campaigned on. And so it raised the expectations of people that we were talking to throughout this campaign. But it also, you know, united the working class because we're campaigning for a good that's no longer means tested. It's for all. Like, it's not just for certain levels of income. And also, we polarize people along class lines because we really pointed out that the reason that housing is so expensive is because capitalist developers and capitalist landlords are squeezing every dollar that they can out of you and your family for rent so they can profit. And that's just the system that we live under. And the only way that we can change that system is by treating housing as a human right and not as a commodity. So yeah, I think that is, I think that's the really important thing for us to remember, is that we need to stay grounded in why we're doing electoral work in the first place, and we know that we're not just going to elect socialism into being, and it's going to take a lot of organizing from below and labor solidarity, strikes, disruptions, but that we also should recognize that elections are, in many cases, the gateway drug for socialism. And that we also need to be very particular about the elections that we do engage in. We should not be endorsing anyone willy-nilly. We should be endorsing people who really bring out this class struggle character in campaigns.
I just want to say to your like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and not achieving 3, just this one case, like in New York, we ran 2 candidates in 2017, and we lost both those campaigns, but it was through those campaigns that we built the infrastructure, I think, to be able to win the campaigns that we were able to this last year. So having those other points, so important, because people don't continue the work if it's just all about winning and nothing else. So completely agree. So once upon a time, a galaxy far away, I attended college, and I studied film. And when I look back on that and think, like, why did I study film? Like, I didn't actually continue working in film. And I realized that one of the reasons I studied film was because I couldn't decide, and I found so many different things interesting. History was interesting, literature was interesting, there were so many things that were interesting, and studying film allowed me to view all of those things through the lens of film. Obviously film isn't the only way to do that, but that was the biggest reason. And when I look at now why I love electoral work, it's very, very similar. Like, I can't pick an issue. They're all so urgent and so important. And through electoral work, I'm able to work on every issue, participate with working groups and organizations that are working on all these other issues through the lens of electoral work. And I'm a big believer in basically electoral work being a tool to use to talk about other things and to enhance other things and to bring these issues to people's doorsteps when you go and you canvass and you talk to people, whether you're talking to them at the doors, on the phone, on the streets. And I think that is sort of the first thing that makes electoral work really accessible for people, is you can kind of approach it from any angle and be passionate about anything, any specific issue. And there is a way, not just like a way to sort of squeeze that into the work, but to enhance the electoral work itself and to enhance the work on that issue. So I'm a big believer that, like, and it's been really sort of exciting to see the conversations shifting away from like one or the other. Like, we have only 2 options. We do electoral work or we do this other thing. And I know when I first joined DSA, that was a big debate. You can see it all the time. And you don't really hear that very much anymore. And I think that's a really awesome evolution that's happened in the last couple years in DSA, outside of DSA, is this understanding that electoral work, and we'll just say like eco-socialist work, are extremely complementary to each other, and they strengthen each other. And so I think that as long as we have the mindset that campaigns are this great tool to use to enhance all this other work, it sort of takes away any fears about electoral work or pulling resources from other things, and instead just becomes this great place with a very low bar for entry, but a very like huge opportunities for leadership and growth. So I think that the great thing about electoral campaigns, and the thing that I really love about them, is the mission is very clear. It's like a super clear mission, and you have goals, you have deadlines, and then even inside of an electoral campaign, there are like deadlines for different parts depending on where in the country you are. In New York, we have like the petitioning deadline, so you can set a goal there and build all of your events around these very specific goals. And then you have, just voter contact and IDing supporters, and you have all these goals there, and you can break it down. And then you have get out the vote, and you have all these goals there. So it's really, really clear. Like the structure by which you're doing the work is super clear. So it's satisfying in a way, and I think people are attracted to knowing that like the work that they're doing is achieving some goal, and you can kind of measure it and demonstrate it. And I think that there's an expiration date on a campaign, which is great. Like win or you lose, super clear. Though I want to again emphasize what Jack said. Like if you don't have all these other factors, if you don't have community, if you're not pulling in other issues and talking about other issues and helping people redefine what's possible, it ends up being a lot like traditional campaigns that we think of, where somebody sort of swoops into a community, asks you to knock on some doors, they win or they lose, but either way they swoop out, and the people who did all the work sort of are back to the beginning. And the next campaign that comes in, you start from scratch again. So DSA and the electoral work that DSA does offers a very different path for this work. I think one of the other amazing sort of gateway drug aspects of electoral work is that it offers a space to develop leadership skills, which is super, super, super important in DSA, whatever work that anybody's doing. I think one of the things that we realized in Brooklyn when we first started the electoral work and in the field work was that the first thing we needed were people that were willing to lead events. We need people who can run canvases, who know how to train people on these, and then know what materials to bring and how to report things back. And so the first thing we did was have trainings to teach people how to run these events. And I think anybody who's done any work in DSA, probably everybody here is very familiar with this, like having those people that are comfortable leading events and bringing people in, and being that welcoming person that is always on the lookout for new people, saying hi to them, making them feel welcome, helping them navigate DSA, because DSA can be a little complicated sometimes to navigate, is super, super important. And so just like looking at, I'm just going to take Julia Salazar's campaign as an example, because we've seen this sort of work out just in the last 6 months. We basically, DSA ran all of the canvases on Julia's campaign. And I would say that we had about 1,800 people who did a volunteer shift through the course of the campaign. And a little over half of them were DSA members, but a whole bunch of them were not DSA members. And many became DSA members through that work. And just as important, many people who were brand new to electoral work, brand new to DSA, or just being in a DSA environment, joined DSA and then stepped up into leadership positions. So our electoral organizing committees in New York City, we have something like 7 people who not only weren't in leadership positions in DSA 5 months ago, but weren't DSA members 5 months ago. And I think when we look back historically in New York City, the long history of queers, we see that like a lot of people who are on the